If all of humanity were petrified, what would the world look like? As a green light swept across the globe, all humans turned into stone statues. The cities filled with skyscrapers turned into mountains and rivers. 3,700 years after humanity was petrified, a man in a cave broke out of his stone statue. His name is Taiju. Before the green light enveloped the earth, Taiju was confessing his love to his crush, Yuzuriha. But before the situation could be expressed, they turned into two stone statues separated. Driven by his determination to confess, Taiju broke free from petrification, only to find the world had changed. Everywhere, humans turned into stone statues. Many of these statues had crumbled into pieces due to weathering. After making a grass sky shirt, the big tree climbed mountains and crossed rivers to reach the tree, where he confessed to Yuzuriha. Seeing the girl he had longed for day and night, Taiju, with tears in his eyes, finally confessed his love. 3,000 years late, he vowed to revive. He noticed a line carved into the tree. Unexpectedly, Taiju wasn't the first human to wake up. His friend Senku had already broken free from the petrification 6 months earlier. Look at that person's clothes. In comparison, the big tree's outfit seems quite shabby. Senku rejected Taiju's enthusiastic hug and told him that 3,700 had passed since they were petrified. In the 6 months since awakening, the sky hadn't been idle, always striving to advance to the next stage of civilization. He's a science fanatic, but he's not good at physical labor. Just preparing the food alone takes an entire day. Now that the Taizu has come back to life, there's someone to handle the dirty and tiring work. Senku aims to unravel the mystery of petrification and restore human civilization. Taiju is determined to revive the two, decide to start from scratch and create civilization together. The Taizu trunk is indeed a great worker. In just half a day, he gathered a large basket of mushrooms, leaving Senku in awe of his efficiency. Fortunately, Senku recognized the poisonous mushrooms otherwise their venture would have ended early. After eating and drinking their fill, Taizu set outdoor again. He found a large area of grapevines. On his way back, he passed the cave where he woke up and discovered a basket collecting a mysterious liquid. Could there be other humans besides him and the Senku? The Senku appeared from behind, stopping the Taizu. Wild thoughts, of course. This is Senku's masterpiece. With just the two of them, it wouldn't work. The key was to increase the human population. This mysterious liquid was nitric acid. Both of them were forced to wake up using nitric acid. After the Senku revived, experiments were continuously conducted with petrified swallows. Despite countless attempts, there was no effect. Senku proposed if they had alcohol, they could make a nitric acid alcohol solution. Maybe a miracle would happen. The Taizu immediately thought of the grapevine he discovered. The two hit it off and started making wine. Taiju put the grapes in a basin and stomped on them with his feet, then carefully stirred the liquid in a pot. After a few days, they finally made grape wine. Next, they needed to distill it to extract alcohol. However, their pottery couldn't withstand high temperatures, so they had to wait until winter. Seasons passed, and after countless experiments, this time the potion finally broke the swallow's seal. Although it worked on the swallow, could this potion really revive humans? This man faced a pride of lions without fear, casually throwing a punch that turned the lions into their dinner. Who exactly is he? How did humans wake up 3,700 years after being petrified? Senku and Taizu spent a year finally making the revival potion. The Taizu couldn't contain his excitement and wanted to revive his lovers immediately, so the two went to the tree. The man suddenly thought that when he was revived, he wasn't wearing any clothes. If he were to revive without any prepare, wouldn't that be a benefit to the Senku? Some things aren't meant to be shared between good friends. He turned and poked at the eye in the Senku, insisting on carrying the Taizu back to camp to prepare clothes before reviving her. The Senku was utterly silent, as if to say, "See how fast you can walk back? You could have picked several baskets of mushrooms by now." Just then, a lion's roar came from into a cold sweat. When the lion appeared before them, they immediately ran. Since humans were petrified, zoo lions had escaped. These kings of the forest had become the world's rulers again. To the lions, Senku and Taiju were a delicious dinner. Taiju, being a good brother, suddenly stopped, threw the girl to Senku, and stayed behind to cover their retreat. This immature idea is immediately rejected by Senku. To rebuild human civilization, they not only need Senku's intellect, but also Taiju's physical strength. Suddenly, Taiju remembers that while searching for food earlier, he discovered the statue of the strongest high school primate, Lion King Shishu. Now they have no choice but to try reviving Lion King Shishu as a last resort, even if it means making the girl wait a little longer. Just as Senku pours the revival fluid on the statue, they are completely surrounded by a pack of lions.
Okay.
With a single unadorned punch, Lion King Shishu scares the lions into fleeing in all directions. Taiju is overjoyed at suddenly gaining such a powerful ally, but Senku is filled with concern. If Shishu turns out to be a bad person, his overwhelming physical strength would allow him to dominate in this era without firearms, putting both Senku and Taiju in danger. For now, Shishu shows no signs of hostility, which eases Taiju's guard. However, the cautious Senku still doesn't fully trust him. The group brings Shishu back to their base, where Shishu boasts that with him around, they will never have to worry about food. Whether it's chasing wild boars on the plains, catching geese barehanded, or even fishing, he excels at it all. After eating their fill, Senku brings up the need for calcium carbonate to advance civilization. He tasks Taiju with collecting seashells from the coast and grinding them into powder. Calcium carbonate has 4 main uses. First, as fertilizer for agriculture. Second, for making cement. Third, for producing soap, which is essential for sterilization in a world without modern medicine. And fourth, a use Senku keeps to himself. But Senku is nowhere to be found in bed. Instead, he is secretly crafting a mysterious tool. The next day, shares his past of being bullied by powerful elders and expresses his ideal of creating a new world exclusively for young people. He hopes to gain Senku's support, but Senku rejects his idea.
科学の力で人類全員漏れなく助けてやる。
Will the trio, now divided for the first time, go their separate ways? 3,700 years ago, the world was engulfed in a green light, and all humans were instantly petrified. From the moment Senku, the science enthusiast, broke free from his petrification, he resolved to rebuild human civilization. After reviving his best friend Taiju and the strongest high schooler, Lion King Shishu, Senku realizes that Shishu's worldview is completely different from his own. Shishu dreams of creating a world solely for the young, while callously destroying the statues of the elderly. This directly contradicts Senku's goal of saving all humanity. For now, Shishu remains unaware of the secret behind the revival fluid, which gives Senku some leverage. However, the simple-minded Taiju is oblivious to the tension between the two. After gathering enough nitric acid, Taiju eagerly prepares to revive his crush. Senku, exasperated by his clueless teammate, pretends to remain calm and starts preparing the revival fluid. Midway through, Senku realizes they are short on materials and asks Taiju to fetch more, but Shishu grabs Taiju midair, claiming he is faster and demanding to know the location of the revival fluid before disappearing. Once Shishu leaves, Senku quickly resumes making the revival fluid, while Taiju remains confused about why Shishu was sent away. Senku explains that they and Shishu are not on the same path, and Taiju, who trusts Senku unconditionally, stops questioning. Meanwhile, Shishu arrives at a cave and discovers the nitric acid, finally understanding the principle behind the revival fluid. On his way back, he begins destroying statues. Back at the base, Taiju, barely containing his excitement, wants to hold a ceremony before reviving his crush, but Senku snatches the fluid and pours it on the statue. As the statue cracks open, Taiju's long-awaited goddess is finally freed and collapses into his arms. Senku interrupts their emotional reunion, pointing out that they now face 2 choices: flee immediately or stay and fight Shishu together. Though Taiju is love-struck, he would never abandon his friend. Just then, Shishu returns, tossing aside fragments of statues. The rift between them grows deeper, as Shishu openly admits to killing people. Enraged, Taiju charges at Shishu, but Senku, fearing for Taiju's safety, fires a crossbow bolt at Shishu. However, Shishu effortlessly catches the bolt and counters with a fluid series of moves, forcing Taiju back. Shishu is shocked. This is the first time someone has survived a direct hit from him. Though Taiju lacks offensive power, his defensive capabilities are impressive. He declares that if Shishu just wants to vent his anger, he can use him as a punching bag. Shishu is deeply moved by this and warns Taiju that if he interferes, he will kill his crush. Taiju stands protectively in front of his goddess, but suddenly collapses. Senku examines him and concludes that he will be unconscious for a few days. Shishu warns them not to get in his way and disappears into the forest. Faced with the overwhelming power of Lion King Shishu, how will Senku and the others respond? How will Senku, the science enthusiast, deal with such a formidable opponent in the Stone Age? It doesn't take long for Senku to devise a plan to stop Shishu. Create more advanced weapons. To avoid direct confrontation, the ever-cautious Senku first destroys their experimental equipment and fakes a hasty retreat, leading Taiju in the opposite direction. His goal is to complete the weapon before Shishu notices. After walking for a while, they finally arrive at a broken Buddha statue. As memories of happier times flood back, Senku steels himself for the challenges ahead. Memories of the past flooded Yuzuriha's heart as she gazed at its weathered form, tears streaming down her face. Meanwhile, Senku discovered copper ions in the bronze statue, the perfect material for crafting copper tools. After gathering materials, the group continued their journey, braving mountains, rivers, wind, and rain. They finally reached the foot of Mount Fuji. In Japan's volcanic terrain, they found sulfur, the critical ingredient for gunpowder. Meanwhile, Tsukasa, through keen observation, deduced Senku's plans. To stop them before gunpowder was complete, he raced to intercept. How can humanity create gunpowder in a resource-starved Stone Age? 3,700 years after petrification, Senku secured sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate. Mixing the ingredients, Taiju lifted a massive stone and slammed it onto the mixture. Sparks flew. Boom! A violent explosion erupted as gunpowder ignited. Taiju assumed Senku would use it against Tsukasa, but Senku planned to negotiate instead. The explosion's smoke drew Tsukasa's attention. Simultaneously, a smoke signal rose from a distant mountain, evidence of other survivors. To signal back, Senku intensified their fire, inadvertently exposing their location. Tsukasa soon arrived. Instead of attacking Senku, he took Yuzuriha hostage. Senku feigned indifference, but Tsukasa saw through his act. Senku cared deeply for Yuzuriha and Taiju. Tsukasa demanded the revival fluid formula, but Senku refused. Enraged, Tsukasa sliced Yuzuriha's hair. Yuzuriha, summoning courage, turned a blade on herself, urging Senku never to reveal the secret. Heartbroken, Senku relented and disclosed the formula. Tsukasa offered a deal: abandon science and he'd spare them. Senku flashed back to his childhood, his passion for science, nurtured only by Taiju and Yuzuriha. Science defined his life. Surrendering it was impossible. Two ideologies collide.
何寝言言ってやがる。どう答えようが、どうせゆくゆくは殺すんだろうが。念のためな。かもね。一撃でやれよ。だらだら血流して粘んのはお互い非合理的だろうが。
The scientific genius versus the apex warrior. Though respecting each other, their clash was inevitable. Tsukasa vowed a painless death, but Taiju arrived too late. Tsukasa's blade struck Senku down, or so it seemed. When revival fluid dripped onto Senku's petrified neck, his DNA underwent recombination. As Taiju and Yuzuriha mourned, Taiju hurled a boulder skyward. Yuzuriha threw gunpowder at Tsukasa, but he kicked it away. Sparks met the powder, triggering a massive explosion. Seizing the chaos, they fled with Senku's body. At a safe location, Taiju performed CPR. Yuzuriha recalled Senku's hint about his neck. Finding petrification traces, they applied revival fluid. The stone shattered. Senku awoke, analyzing their advantage. Tsukasa believed him dead and would mass revive followers. Senku sent Taiju and Yuzuriha to infiltrate Tsukasa's empire as spies, while he investigated the distant smoke signal. Meanwhile, Tsukasa was stalked by Kohaku, a blue-eyed girl who attacked him for using Yuzuriha as a hostage. Seeing the girl being pressed between the gaps of a tree weighing 1 ton was pressing on the girl. How would the mad scientist Senku rescue her? In the Stone Age, when a tree trunk weighing 1 ton was pressing on a girl, how would Senku, the most powerful brain on Earth, rescue her? He first used dynamite to drill holes in the tree, then put soil into the bamboo to increase its strength, wove the dead grass into ropes and polished them with soap, and finally used a formula to calculate the point of force application. In this way, a simple pulley system was made. The strength of the weak high school student turned into a strange force. That's right, this is Archimedes' principle. When the tree trunk was lifted up, the girl was stunned by the scene in front of her and admired her. She was instantly attracted by Senku's cleverness, conquered by wisdom. The two had a long talk at night and soon reached a consensus. They would work together to build a scientific empire to fight against the Crown Prince Tsukasa. The next morning, the two began their journey. As a girl, Kohaku was not only good at boxing and doing physical work, but she was also good at filling a 50-liter water tank with water. She could easily pick him up with any posture. Senku pulled to help.
君こそ無茶するな。
このストーンワールドは俺以外全員ゴリラかよ。
But the next second, after a long journey, the two soon arrived at the home where Kohaku lived. The scene in front of him shocked Senku. He did not expect that in this backward Stone Age, there would be such a prosperous village, and the villagers lived in harmony. Although there was no modern scientific and technological civilization, there was a different kind of tranquility and peace here. And where did these people come from? Could it be that they were also resurrected by Resurrection Night? Countless questions troubled Senku.
狼藉はやめろ、勤労勤労。私を救った恩人だぞ。
Just then, the sudden appearance of Kinro and Jinro disrupted Senku's thoughts, but Senku was calm and composed. He used happy soap water to rub out cute bubbles. The strongest brain met the strongest magician of the primitive tribe. Who is the strongest king between the two? After several rounds of competition, Chrome's tricks were exposed one by Senku. Senku said disdainfully, "Are you playing a children's science experiment?" But in a blink of an eye, he thought that in this primitive tribe with backward civilization, he could collect so many rare minerals. The little guy obviously has something. Senku immediately became interested in the boy in front of him. Because they all had the same ideal of creating a more high-tech civilization. It was a bit embarrassing to lose so thoroughly. But Chrome still refused to admit defeat. Chrome hoped to use arithmetic to complete the final duel with Senku. But for Senku, who was lingering in his heart with various offensives, this was simply child's play. Chrome was directly beaten, and the scientific warehouse was successfully in Senku's hands. Looking at the full house, Senku couldn't hold back his excitement and couldn't let go of it. He played with it in his hands. Then he took out the cinnabar, heated it, and burned it to get mercury, then melted it into the sand crystal and put the spear in. After a simple baking, a shining golden spear was made. Senku gave the spear to Kinro to win people's hearts. Kinro said no, but he couldn't escape the law of true fragrance. The warehouse not only has a large amount of ore, but also many rare herbs. Originally, Chrome's purpose was very simple. Kohaku's sister Ruri was seriously ill and her body was haggard. The reason why she collected these herbs was to help her recover as soon as possible. Kohaku has been collecting the surrounding hot spring water for the purpose of recuperating for her. Looking at her sister's loose ponytail, the sister knew that something must have happened and was full of guilt. After a brief understanding of the village situation, Chrome immediately asked Senku if there was any advanced medical means to treat Ruri's disease. So Senku told Chrome everything that happened 370 years ago. Chrome burst into tears after hearing it. He was unwilling to see the modern civilization accumulated by his predecessors for millions of years disappear in an instant. Senku pointed out that everything in his head was not erased but preserved here. The two quickly reached a consensus that they would work together to build a scientific kingdom. In order to save Ruri, Senku also expressed her willingness to make a scientific panacea antibiotic. Will they really succeed? In the Stone Age, if you suffered from tuberculosis, you were basically sentenced to death. This girl named Ruri has been plagued by diseases since she was a child and is destined not to live past the age of 18. In order to save her sister, Kohaku broke up with her father. Senku thought that if she could make a panacea antibiotic, she could win people's hearts. With enough manpower, the establishment of a scientific kingdom is just around the corner. Kohaku and Chrome heard that Senku could cure diseases, and they were motivated to help. However, it is not so easy to make a panacea. In the Stone Age, there was nothing. Extracting penicillin was not feasible. The only way was to find a way from stones. This was the way to make antibiotics. Students who wanted to learn could take screenshots and save such a complicated method. The principle still needed to be explained to them clearly. So Senku's science classroom was open from morning to night. After being exhausted, he finally instilled some scientific knowledge in the two of them. In order to increase credibility, Senku personally pointed to the North Star and told them that that was the true north. Finally, they were instilled with some scientific knowledge. In order to increase credibility, Senku told them from his own experience until the North Star told them that that was due north.
さすがの千空もこの石は知らねえみてえだな。萩山でたまたま拾った超やべえ石だぜ。 スルしか浮かべるとなぜか必ずジャスト記者に向くんだぜ。やべえだろ。
Soon Senku realized how they knew the position shifted. This time, Ryusui and Chrome showed off. Senku recognized the magnet at a glance. With this thing, the production of their panacea could officially begin. The Stone Age would also evolve into the Iron Age. The next morning, the three of them came to the river to collect iron sand. Although Suika was a girl, her efficiency was much higher than those two losers. The collection speed of the three of them alone was still too slow. At this time, a watermelon floated over. She was the most useless cute girl in the villagers' eyes. Seeing Senku and the others collecting iron sand, she also wanted to help. For Senku, the more helpers, the better. While working, Chrome accidentally mentioned the elimination of wolves. Although the fairy tales in this world are a bit hardcore, Senku understood that this adaptation was to let them know the horror of the outside world. Only then did he learn that these stories were told by Ruri, and he became very interested in Ruri's sleeplessness. Iron sand was collected according to the ratio of 4:1. It was mixed with carbon and burned to get ironware. It seemed a simple method, but it was extremely difficult. The temperature of the wood gas flame was only 700 degrees, but if you wanted to melt the iron sand into iron, you needed a high temperature of 1500 degrees. In order to make the flame reach a sufficient temperature, Kaseki had to transform into a humanoid bellows machine. Remember what Kinro said, since they were busy until the evening, they were all tired and collapsed near the iron sand. What will Senku think of to deal with these xenophobic villagers? How to make a top-notch ramen in the Stone Age. First, prepare a handful of wheat, then beat the grains off, wash with water, dry, and grind them into flour. Then beat a bird's egg and start kneading the dough. After the noodles are ready, stew a pot of soup and make a bowl of fragrant ramen. How come the people who were still working hard to forge iron suddenly started studying food before the Iron Age was officially established? In fact, everything Senku did was to win people's hearts. The power of the four of them was not enough to raise the temperature of iron smelting. In order to get more villagers to help, they had to find out what they needed. Suika volunteered. Jinro went back to investigate and instantly transformed into the famous detective Conan. Not long after, he brought back a bunch of news. Senku, who was grilling fish, fell in love with the way of making delicious food at first sight. The wheat ramen was born out of nowhere, and the celebrities next door were crying with envy. In fact, the trio doubted Senku's cooking skills. Chrome took a bite, and his face instantly became full of joy. Suika and Kohaku couldn't stop eating. The three of them were completely confused. After 3,700 years, Senku was finally able to eat a bite of real food. The taste could fool these primitive people who had never seen the world. For modern people, it was just barely edible, but the purpose had been achieved. He just pushed the cart to the entrance of the village. The rich fragrance attracted many villagers. The first step to conquer the village was to complete the food strategy. Senku had also become the idol of the girls in the village. The villagers were eating enthusiastically. Suddenly, a sentence caught Senku's attention. The mysterious man was eating noodles as if nothing had happened. Kohaku, Kinro, and Ginro surrounded him instantly. They almost recognized the identity of the mysterious man. His name was Asagiri Gen. Before humans were petrified, he was a magician who had studied love psychology. Asagiri Gen claimed that he had been alone after the petrification was lifted, and that he didn't know Tsukasa Shishio. Even Kohaku could detect Asagiri Gen's lies. Senku didn't care how much ramen he ate. He only cared about how much work he would have to do for him. With the efforts of a group of tools, Senku successfully made iron. It was Gen who worked hard. When Senku suddenly asked about Ukyo and Yowei's situation, Gen knew he was trying to trick him but didn't care at all. So he told him directly that they were living very well. After seeing the iron smelting furnace, Gen's mentality also changed. He called himself the world's strongest negotiator. The four factions of Tsukasa's empire fought just to find out if Senku was still alive. However, since Senku already had the ability to smelt iron, it was not certain who would win or lose in this battle. Moreover, each side had its own advantages. Although the work in the kingdom of science was more tiring, with ramen, it was possible to manufacture weapons. Tsukasa's empire was simpler and more brutal. If a few idols were resurrected, a happy harem life could be started. He wanted to make something out of the freshly made iron, to make Gen completely change sides. In the Stone Age, where there was nothing, it was nothing but a fantasy to want to build a power station. Gen was shocked by Senku's remarks. Senku was using Chrome's copper block and was about to melt it to make copper wire. He was worried about when it would thunder and rain. Suddenly, the sky was filled with lightning. The sound was deafening, and the rain started. Everyone was sighing at how coincidental the rain was. Senku told them that this was actually the worst situation. They had not made any preparations yet. There was no time to talk nonsense. They got to work. Suika borrowed some insulating paint from the onion seeds and painted it on the iron rod. They used a smelting furnace to melt the copper block, removed the wooden boards on the bridge, carved grooves, poured the molten copper into them, made copper wires, and then used cooling to form the copper wires. After a small episode, everyone came to the top of the mountain where Chrome had found the magnet. It was really dangerous to build a platform next to the lightning. Kohaku glanced at it. Kinro and Jinro attacked instantly and seized the lightning rod. After the lightning struck, the powerful magnet was successfully made. Finally, after many efforts, the generator was completed. However, it was not so easy to generate electricity. In this era, dynamic power generation and partial power generation were undoubtedly fantasies. The only thing they could rely on was human power. Senku set his sights on Kinro and Jinro. At the same time, Kinro, holding his golden spear, was at a loss. Jen came out and said, "As long as you have electricity, you can have as many golden spears and silver spears as you want." And at last, Senku connected the wire. The light illuminated the endless darkness. After 3,700 years, the night of the earth was once again lit up like daylight. Gen Asagiri was shocked by the miracle in front of him. He stared at everything in front of him blankly. The kingdom of science that owned the sky might really be able to have a fair fight with the Empire of Might. Which side would Gen Asagiri choose to stand on next? This boy is definitely a rare genius in the world. The first book he read after the petrification was the biography of Edison. When ordinary children were still learning addition and subtraction, Senku had already begun to explore the mysteries of the universe. When others relied on their fists to bully others, he had already used the electric shotgun he invented to beat everyone in the school and was invincible. Now in this stone age where people don't know what science is, they have successfully made electric lights by using human power. However, there is still a big problem that has not been solved. Tsukasa's empire is eyeing his kingdom of science covetously. He must find a way to make Gen Asagiri completely turn to the kingdom of science. Pass on the false news that Senku is dead to buy them time to develop. Senku told Kohaku and the other two the whole story. Chrome couldn't help but shout to Gen Asagiri, "No matter how you look at these two camps, the kingdom of science is more interesting." Gen Asagiri, a fence-sitter, will certainly not make a conclusion easily. Just as he was hesitating about which side to join, he was attacked by Magma. Gen Asagiri was good at talking nonsense. In terms of fighting ability, he was no different from Senku. They were both weaklings. Magma beat him up and stabbed the stone spear into Gen Asagiri's chest before leaving. When Senku and others heard the sound, they saw Gen Asagiri falling to the ground covered in blood. However, no one could be more cunning than him. Gen Asagiri was covered in blood bags. Although he was seriously injured, he was not in any danger of life. The famous detective Suika came online again and returned to the village to investigate. Only then did he know that Magma mistook Gen Asagiri for Senku. He thought that as long as he killed the sorcerer brought by Kohaku, he could make Kohaku lose her power, remove the obstacles to the grand bout, and lead Ruri to the peak of her life. Senku was confused. Kohaku explained that the matter dated back to a few months ago. The tradition of the village was to hold a grand bout on the birthday of the priestess's adulthood. The final champion could lead the priestess to inherit the village chief. That time, Kohaku and Magma entered the finals. Magma had no interest in Ruri and only wanted to get the position of village chief. He even wanted to create an accident for Ruri so that she could return home as soon as possible. Kohaku learned of his intention and beat Magma violently in the finals. Because of Kohaku's interference, the village chief severed the father-daughter relationship with her. The grand bout will be held again next month. If Magma wins the championship, even if they work hard to make a cure-all, they will hardly have a chance to give it to Ruri. They must find a way to let someone from the Kingdom of Science win the competition. Kohaku set her sights on Kinro and Jinro. Jinro was easy to deal with. Kinro told Kohaku not to beat around the bush and to speak directly. With this sentence, the two agreed to Kohaku's request and followed them to start the devil training. Chrome looked at the three people with envy, and Kohaku felt a little embarrassed. Although she knew that Chrome loved Ruri, he had no chance against Magma. Chrome turned into the strongest devoted man and said that as long as he could cure Ruri and make her happy, it would be fine. The battle was handed over to the fighting team, and Senku and Chrome were always fully devoted to the production of the medicine. Sure enough, the fat otaku's happy water was the otaku's youth. The seriously injured Gen Asagiri asked Senku if he could make a cup of cola. After getting a positive answer, Gen Asagiri had already made up his mind about which side he belonged to. The next day in the morning, Chrome found Gen Asagiri had escaped. The Alliance called everyone to chase after him, but Senku wasn't worried. Gen Asagiri should have returned to Tsukasa. Kohaku was worried that he would expose the secret that Senku was still alive. She wanted to chase after him, but Senku was full of confidence and believed that Gen Asagiri would never betray him. After a night of traveling, Gen Asagiri crawled back to Tsukasa's camp. Everything was as Senku expected. While preparing the fat otaku's happy water, the production of the panacea could not be neglected. However, making medicine is a technical job. Ordinary pottery can no longer meet the demand. Glass containers must be used. Moreover, making glass can help the nearsighted Suika see the world clearly. Several people did it as soon as they said. In the Stone Age, the first step to make glass was to find silica sand. Then grind the collected silica sand into powder. Put it into the furnace and roast it, and add lead to the resulting liquid. A semi-finished transparent crystal glass was made. The next step was to make glasses for Suika. First test the light, Then grind the glass pieces into suitable degrees and inlay them on Suika's headgear. The first pair of glasses in the Stone Age was completed. With the help of the glasses, the world in the eyes of Suika instantly changed from a blur to clarity. Senku's purpose of being busy for a long time was certainly not simple. This face was that of a capitalist. Sure enough, with clear vision, Suika's work efficiency became higher and higher. Next, they had to make glassware. Heat the obsidian to produce white foam. These foams are very good thermal insulation materials and can be made into glass-shaping furnaces. Make iron pipes with hot molten iron and stick them on the glass to blow into shape. None of them are craftsmen and can't do such delicate work at all. It is conservatively estimated that it will take several months to fully master the skills, but Ruri can't wait that long. Speaking of craftsmen, Chrome had a candidate in mind. He returned to the village and tied up the strongest craftsman. Kaseki had no good feelings towards the sorcerer, especially when he dismantled the wooden bridge he built. Senku knew too well what to do with such a craftsman, so he dragged Kaseki to the glass-shaping furnace for demonstration. The process of making glass with Senku and Chrome's clumsy techniques made Kaseki so angry that he immediately lost his temper. He stretched out the rope and snatched the iron pipe from Chrome's hand to show them what real craftsmanship is. He blew it up and shaped it in one go. He taught this clumsy young man a lesson. In no time, he made a room full of glass containers. The empty science laboratory was officially put into use. The prototype of the Kingdom of Science had been established. Everyone in the Kingdom of Science was working hard to do their own job. But there was a corner where no one cared about. Two grown men were being beaten by a woman. In order to ensure that Kinro and Jinro could win the grand bout, Kohaku trained them with a machine devil every day. Jinro, who always had a sharp mind and smooth talk, looked at Kaseki, who blew glass next door, with envy. It was really boring to passively get beaten every day. There was really no motivation. The two brothers sat down to discuss that if they could each have a spear that could defeat Magma, 10 Magmas would not be their opponents. When it came to the Golden Spear, Kinro and Jinro instantly stood on the same front. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and comment if you want part 2.